I didn't fly again that week. Instead, I watched, and I took notes. From my garage, I observed a pattern. Every time I so much as opened the hangar-style gate to the helicopter pad, a figure emerged from a nearby window. Binoculars, coffee cup, notebook in hand. Same person, every time. Mrs. Clara Holbrook, HOA secretary, widow. Once friendly, now acting like the surveillance lead for a homeowner's black ops unit. She wasn't alone. One morning, while trimming my hedges, I caught a young man in a maintenance vest walking toward my backyard gate. "Need help?" I asked casually. He froze. "Oh, sorry, wrong address." He turned and walked back toward a truck parked on the next street over. A city utilities vehicle. But there was no logo, and the tag on the plate looked fake. I snapped a picture just before it turned the corner. That night, I heard tapping at my back fence. Low, subtle. I went out with my flashlight and a sidearm holstered, just in case. No one there. But I did find something new. A fresh set of scrape marks on the concrete where the tail end of the chopper sat, like someone had tried moving it or opening the maintenance hatch. They were getting bolder, and I was running out of patience. By then, the weekend, I had an idea. I dug out my old GoPro drones, relics from a recon test project I'd run years ago. Small, silent, perfect for neighborhood flyovers. That Sunday, just before sunrise, I launched 2 of them. One circled the HOA clubhouse, which sat at the end of the development near a man-made lake. The other ran a sweep pattern over Margot Templeton's house. The footage was boring, until it wasn't. At 5:32 a.m., a silver Mercedes pulled up behind the clubhouse. Out stepped Templeton and 2 men in business suits. One of them handed her a manila envelope. She gave him a handshake and a check. But what caught my attention? A folder the man carried was stamped. Property Conversion Phase 3. Red Ridge Subdiv. My neighborhood. They weren't just angry about my helicopter. They were planning something, zoomed in on the documents through a still frame. The title read, Proposed Redevelopment for Multi-Unit Construction Zone. Recreational and industrial conversion. They were trying to buy up homes, evict long-time residents, flatten the suburb, replace it with high-rise condos and, get this, a private heliport for urban executive transit. They didn't hate helicopters. They just hated that mine wasn't theirs. 2 hours later, I showed the footage to my closest neighbor, an older Navy vet named Curtis. Curtis stared at the paused frame, eyebrows climbing. "That's a classified. City zoning folder," he muttered. "Ain't supposed to be in civilian hands, especially not in an HOA's backyard." I nodded. "They're selling us off, parcel by parcel." Curtis folded his arms. "So what are you gonna do?" I looked. Out at my helicopter. The answer came easy. Fly. Not just legally, loudly. "They declared war," I said, "and I speak fluent shock and awe." I didn't sleep that night either. Instead, I polished the rotors, ran diagnostics, topped off fuel, rechecked flight clearances. I was going to give Margot Templeton something she'd never forget. Not violence, not damage, just spectacle. She thought. She could control the neighborhood with fine print and fencing rules. She'd forgotten what happens when you back someone into a corner, especially someone trained to fly into fire and come out the other side. At exactly 6:59 a.m., the following. Saturday, I ignited the ignition switches on the Kiowa. The neighborhood was asleep. Mostly. I wore my old flight gloves, now worn at the knuckles, and flipped each pre-flight switch in perfect sequence. The digital diagnostics panel blinked green across the board. RPM stabilized. Rotor engaged. The faint rhythmic thwup, thwup, thwup of spinning blades grew sharper, stronger, angrier. I didn't care about the HOA fines. I didn't care that I was violating community standards. I was in full compliance with federal aviation law. and I was done playing defense. At 7:00 a.m. sharp, the chopper lifted, gracefully, deliberately, loudly. Curtis was already standing at his porch with a mug in hand, smiling like a man watching justice bloom in his flower bed. I circled once above the cul-de-sac, low, slow, and stable. Every motion, designed to shake windows but not rattle bolts. I angled toward the center of the neighborhood, making sure to pass right over Templeton's prized front lawn. She'd just replanted it with imported Kentucky bluegrass. I descended to 60 feet. The downwash was immense. Grass whipped, porch flags snapped, and a row of decorative gnomes went tumbling across her mulch like bowling pins. I hovered there, stationary for 10 long seconds. That's when her front door burst open. There she was, Margot Templeton, wearing a robe, curlers, and holding her phone in one hand, waving the other furiously in the air. I dipped the nose of the helicopter down slightly. A subtle nod. Then I rose, spun once in a neat, smooth arc, and zipped off, high enough to comply with city airspace rules, but low enough that every single neighbor caught the show. By the time I landed back in my backyard, I had 4 missed calls, all from an unlisted number. Then a voicemail came through. It was her. "Mr. Kane, this is Margot Templeton, HOA president. I am notifying you that your behavior this morning was outrageous and a breach of neighborhood safety. If you don't remove that aircraft immediately, we will pursue civil action. You'll be hearing from our lawyers." I replayed it. Twice. Saved it. Then I replied the only way that mattered. I posted the full helmet cam footage of the flight online with a caption. "HOA says my helicopter's a danger." So I gave them a demo. Within hours, the video had gone semi-viral among veteran groups and aviation forums. But I wasn't done. That afternoon, I visited the county records office. While Templeton was filing complaints, I was pulling land plats and aerial rights data. What I found: the HOA never filed official restrictions on helipad usage. Their noise complaints weren't even logged with city officials, and the kicker? My lot had a grandfathered aviation clause from the original developer, which legally protected aircraft operations from the ground. They didn't just lose their argument, they never had one. I returned home and made a copy of everything. The following morning, I dropped a packet on Templeton's porch. No note. No threats. Just a copy of the city's aviation compliance, my FAA permit, the original land clause, and her own HOA bylaw that explicitly said federal airspace regulation supersedes all community guidelines. The war had begun. But now, I had proof. Still, I had no idea how far she was willing to go. That night, my security camera caught someone in a hoodie prowling around my fence. He didn't touch the helicopter this time, but he left something behind. A small red flag stabbed into the grass and tied to it a card. "Enjoy your next flight. It might be your last." The red flag wasn't just a threat. It was a challenge. I examined the small card tied to its base. The handwriting was tight and deliberate, printed in all caps with a mechanical feel. Someone wanted me to think this was a joke. It wasn't. Called Curtis and had him review the security footage. At 2:43 a.m., a hooded figure ducked between hedges, crawled low along the perimeter, then placed the flag like they were planting a mine. Then they looked directly into the camera and smiled. Curtis leaned back in his chair. "This ain't no HOA drama anymore, Kane. This is personal." He was right. I'd struck a nerve, but I didn't know whose. I called the local police and filed a report for trespassing and attempted intimidation, but the officer shrugged like he was logging just another neighbor's spat. "Unless they damaged something or made physical contact," he said, "we can't do much." I wasn't surprised, but I wasn't about to sit on my hands either. I spent the next morning triple-checking the helicopter, and sure enough, just beneath the main rotor assembly, I found something that didn't belong. A small nylon cord, knotted loosely around the push-pull tube, nearly invisible under normal inspection. Had I flown without noticing it? That cord could have caused a control malfunction at low altitude. I could have spun out, crashed, or worse, hit someone else. I removed it, bagged it, and stored it in my garage safe. This wasn't vandalism anymore. This was sabotage. And I was officially at war. I wasn't the only one getting the heat. That. Afternoon? Curtis called again. They flagged my mailbox for non-conforming color, he grunted. Same box I've had for 15 years. Same paint. Then he paused. You think they're trying to isolate you? I nodded slowly. Classic tactic. Discredit allies. Cut supply lines. Same thing they did in Kandahar, just with yard signs instead of bullets. I decided it was time to make a bigger play. I launched a second drone sweep, this time with upgraded optics and thermal mode. I didn't expect to catch much, but around midnight the drone picked up 3 heat signatures near the HOA clubhouse. One of them was Templeton. The other 2 I didn't recognize. Tall, one of them with a noticeable limp. They weren't talking. They were loading black trash bags into a car parked behind the building. The same silver Mercedes from earlier. The drone followed them for 2 blocks before they vanished under a parking garage. But it was enough. They were hiding something, and it wasn't about the helicopter anymore. The next morning, I mailed an anonymous USB copy of the footage to the city's zoning committee, marked urgent along with a note. Possible code violations and nighttime activity at Red Ridge HOA Clubhouse. Please investigate. I didn't sign it. Let them wonder who sent it. But Templeton wasn't wondering. She was furious. That evening, while I was working in my garage, she stormed into my driveway like a suburban hurricane, wearing pearls, heels, and that smug HOA, righteousness painted across her face like war paint. You think this is a game, Mr. Kane? She hissed. You think you're clever, flying around and playing spy? I stayed silent. You want to be the neighborhood rebel? Fine. But don't come crying when your little toy crashes through someone's roof and you're slapped with a manslaughter charge. That was no empty threat. That was calculated escalation. And that's when I saw it. Her hands were trembling. Just slightly. She was scared. Not of me, but of whatever she was covering up. As she left, I called Curtis. I need you to dig, I said, deep into her past, into the HOA's finances, into everything. You expecting to find something? No, I replied, staring at the red flag still pinned in my yard. I know I'll find something, because someone's trying damn hard to keep it buried. Curtis called me the next morning with a voice as sharp as a razor. I found something, he said, and it stinks. He dug into the HOA's financial filings, or rather the lack of them. Their most recent quarterly report had been filed but not signed. The digital copy showed a familiar signature, Margot Templeton. But the date? It was backdated 3 weeks before their budget meeting. Falsified documents. Worse, a few vendor invoices listed a shell LLC based out of another state, West Ridge Developments. That rang a bell. I ran a deeper search. Turns out, West Ridge wasn't just a fake landscaping contractor. It was tied to a real estate holding group in New Jersey, known for buying suburban properties under fake names, then forcing buyouts with fake citations and legal intimidation. Templeton wasn't the boss. She was the middleman. That night I made a decision that went against every protocol I'd ever followed. I was going inside the HOA clubhouse. Curtis offered to be my lookout, parked 2 blocks away with a walkie-talkie and eyes on the front gate. At 2:17 a.m., I crept around the side, entered through a ground-level window I'd seen propped open earlier that day, and slipped inside. It was quiet. Too quiet. I made my way to the file room, a glorified storage closet lined with metal drawers, cabinets, and labeled bins. Half were empty, but one drawer stood out, Archive, Cecil Parimtes. Inside were copies of neighborhood modification, requests, all denied, driveway extensions, pool fencing, solar panel installations, And mine, the helipad request, stamped rejected. But the date was after I'd already received approval from the FAA. That meant they faked the rejection to make it seem like I was out of compliance. But then something even bigger caught my eye, an unlabeled folder tucked behind a stack of HOA newsletters. Inside, blueprints, satellite overlays, zoning requests for a redevelopment site called Red Ridge Corporate Landing Strip, Phase 1. Complete with a projected demolition map that included over a dozen homes, mine and Curtis's among them. They weren't just threatening people, they were preparing to erase them. As I turned to leave, I froze. Footsteps, heavy, deliberate. Then, a voice. Should have known you'd come poking around. It wasn't Templeton. It was the man with the limp. The one from the drone footage. He stepped into the hallway, flipping on a flashlight. "I don't know what the hell you think you're doing," he said, "but you're way out of your depth." "You work for West Ridge?" He smirked. "I am West Ridge." He stepped closer, glancing down at the folder in my hand. "That wasn't meant for your eyes, pilot boy." I took a step back. "Try me." He smiled, but it wasn't friendly. It was surgical. "Think your little war's about a helicopter? You're sitting on top of a $40 million acquisition zone. You're not a neighbor, you're a delay." He lunged, faster than I expected with his limp. I ducked, shoved the folder into my jacket, and barreled through the side door into the night. I made it home with a torn jacket, a bruised rib, and the folder intact. Curtis was all ready. "In my driveway, engine running." "You look like hell," he muttered. "Feels worse," I groaned. "But I've got what we need." We scanned the folder that night. The shell companies were tied to West Ridge. The HOA was facilitating property, buyouts under the radar. And Templeton? She was just one of 5 named co-signers, including a familiar name I hadn't expected, David Reese, retired Air Force colonel. My former CO, my blood ran cold. He wasn't just a mentor. He'd sponsored my move into the neighborhood. This went deeper than I thought, and I was officially running out of allies. I didn't sleep that night, not after learning my old CO, Colonel David Reese, was involved in this HOA scam. It wasn't just betrayal, it was a setup. From the moment he recommended this neighborhood, I'd been part of a plan I hadn't agreed to. A pawn placed carefully on the board. Now I needed answers, and I wasn't waiting for them to come quietly. At sunrise, I drove to Reese's estate 2 towns over. His place was exactly what you'd expect from a career officer turned consultant. Iron gates, security cameras, a flagpole taller than the trees. I buzzed the intercom. No answer. I buzzed again. "David, it's Kane. You're gonna open this gate, or I'm gonna fly over it next time." A pause. Then, click. The gate groaned open. He met me on the porch, wearing a pressed polo shirt and that familiar calm expression he used to wear in the briefing room. "Kane," he said, "you look tense. You look like a man hiding behind paperwork and private security." He gestured inside. "You came all this way. Let's talk." The house was too clean, too quiet. The kind of silence that meant money and secrets had shared the same walls for years. I dropped the manila folder on his kitchen table, the one I'd taken from the HOA office. "You co-signed this. You vouched for Templeton. You recruited me for this neighborhood." He didn't even flinch. "She recruited me," he said calmly, "and I did what I always do. Follow the mission." "What mission?" I demanded. "To increase property value for corporate acquisition. Your neighborhood was undervalued, filled with long-term residents who didn't keep up with modern standards. Templeton had a vision." "Templeton's a crook," I said. "She's a pragmatist," he countered. "She understood that change requires pressure. And who better to keep order in the chaos than someone like you?" I took a step closer. "You sent a man to tamper with my aircraft." "That wasn't me," he said, dead serious. "That was Templeton getting spooked. That part wasn't sanctioned." "And the rest of it?" All sanctioned? Reese's tone dropped. You've always been a soldier, Kane. Soldiers don't win by standing still. They win by adapting. I laughed, cold and bitter. You really think this is war, don't you? It is, he replied. Just not with guns anymore. Now it's zoning boards, shell corporations, and city council votes. Same battlefield, just different weapons. I stared at him. My former mentor, the man who once taught me to value honor over everything. Now he was just another corporate foot soldier dressed in patriotism. I'm not going to be part of this, I said. You already are, he answered. You either fall in line and cash out like the others, or you become a problem. And problems, Kane. He leaned in. Get neutralized. For a second, the air between us was razor thin. I've fought in deserts, jungles, and airfields, I said. I've dodged missiles, rockets, and lies. But I'll tell you this, Colonel. I stepped back toward the door. If you or your people come for me again, the next thing I fly won't just be landing on Templeton's lawn. It'll be dragging this whole operation into the sun. Back home, Curtis had already set up a backup server, 3 encrypted drives, and a public Dropbox account. I handed him the folder. Scan it. Upload it. Make it public. You sure? He asked. I'm done playing defense. That night, something strange happened. A black SUV drove slowly past my house. No plates. Then a call came in. Blocked number. 1 word. Whispered. Run. Then silence. By the next morning, Curtis had done what Curtis does best. He'd turned chaos into clarity. The files from the HOA archive, satellite maps, zoning plans, and shell company ledgers were now uploaded to a public cloud drive labeled Operation Red Ridge, the HOA Conspiracy. Curtis even threw in a slick website with a countdown timer titled The Drop, set to release everything automatically in 72 hours if either of us didn't manually reset it. Insurance, the digital kind, that gave us 3 days to move, but we weren't the only ones making moves. 3 homes, all neighbors who had publicly supported me, were suddenly cited by the HOA for absurd violations. One for fence paint too reflective, another for mailbox dimensions exceeding regulated aesthetics, and the third, a retired school teacher named Elsie. Her driveway had been jackhammered overnight. No warning. Just gone. Templeton wasn't using fear anymore. She was using demolition. At 4 p.m., I got a ping from my drone surveillance system. Someone had walked around the back of my house, but there was no footage. Just static. Same jammed signal as before. I checked my fuel tank again. This time, sugar in the lines. They weren't just trying to scare me. They were trying to ground me for good. I knew I had one card left to play. Exposure. And fast. So I called in a favor from an old contact at the local affiliate news station. A reporter named Jaime Duran, someone I'd flown rescue missions with during a flood crisis in Louisiana. Jaime arrived in a nondescript gray van with tinted windows and 2 cameras in hand. You look like you've walked into a covert op, she said as she stepped inside. I have, I replied, handing her the flash drive. She watched the footage, scrolled through documents, and her face changed from curiosity to alarm. Holy hell, she whispered. This isn't just corruption. This is engineered displacement. Will you run it? She looked up. I'll run it, but this story's going to make enemies. Already have 'em. An hour later, I walked outside to clear my head, only to freeze in place. A sleek black helicopter, not mine, hovered over the HOA clubhouse, military grade. No markings. Then it lowered slowly onto the parking lot, and from inside, 3 figures stepped out, all in suits, one carrying a briefcase. Curtis, watching through binoculars from across the street, muttered, "That's not a city inspection crew." CIA? I asked. He shook his head. Private sector, probably contracted. Whoever they are, I said. They're not here to talk about landscaping. That night, Templeton called me directly. No more veil, no more pleasant HOA newsletter. Tone. Her voice was jagged. "You've caused quite a storm, Mr. Kane." "You started it," I said flatly. "You think you're smart? Uploading files? Calling the press? You're going to find out that not everything gets solved with a dramatic drone shot." "I'm not solving anything," I said. "I'm just giving people the truth." She chuckled, but it was hollow. "Then let me give you one. There's no winning this, only surviving it." Click. Curtis rewound the audio and pointed out a sound in the background, not static. Wind. Heavy. He isolated it. "Helicopter blades," he muttered. But that wasn't a call from a house or a phone booth. We traced the cell tower ping. Templeton wasn't calling from home. She was on board the black helicopter I'd seen earlier. She was trying to disappear, but before she could vanish, we received a message from someone we didn't expect. Check Templeton's donation logs. Look for a name, August Rhodes. No number, no reply, just a text. Curtis looked at me. "That name ring a bell?" I nodded slowly. "Yeah. He runs the Regional Infrastructure Bureau. He signs off on every redevelopment permit in the state. We weren't dealing with just an HOA or shady corporate muscle anymore. This was political. This was systemic. This was war. The next morning I suited up. No hesitation, no debate. I was going up. This time, it wasn't for surveillance. It wasn't a message. It was a warning shot across every corrupt official's bow. And I was done being subtle. Curtis had tracked the GPS ping from Templeton's call. It led to a private estate on a lakefront, owned by a shell company traced back to none other than August Rhodes, the state infrastructure chief himself, the man behind the curtain. According to Curtis, Templeton had taken refuge there the night before, probably thought the chaos would settle, that the story wouldn't get legs. She was wrong. By dawn, local media had already teased the HOA corruption story. Traffic on the Red Ridge leak site was spiking. Thousands of views, hundreds of comments. The internet smelled blood. But I wasn't, waiting for the system to solve itself. I fired up the rotor. My bird, recently cleaned, patched, refueled, was purring like she wanted revenge too. Curtis gave me a hard look. "You land that chopper near a government estate and they'll call in airspace violations." "I'm not landing," I said. "I'm hovering. And if they shoot at you?" I grinned. Then they just confirmed everything we said was true. The flight was smooth, calm, the kind of calm that only comes before a storm. The lakefront came into view, a sprawling modern compound with marble docks, luxury vehicles, and more security than a private prison. It was all surrounded by dense pine forest, but they hadn't counted on an aerial arrival. I flew low, under radar, then climbed sharply and banked left, letting the chopper cast a long, loud shadow right over the property. The moment I appeared overhead, I saw them. 4 security guards scrambling toward Templeton, shielding her as she sprinted toward a glass door. I hit the loudspeaker. "This is former Captain Kane Marshall, USAF. I have visual confirmation of Templeton and August Rhodes. This location is now a crime scene of public interest. Walk out, or I'll make sure this story hits national before your coffee even cools." Seconds later, someone tried to aim what looked like a scoped rifle at me from a balcony. I banked sideways, circled, and came back around, lower. The rifle disappeared. Curtis was watching the live feed from my drone back home. "Dude," he said in my earpiece, "they're freaking out. Someone just tried wiping Templeton's files remotely. Too late. Already mirrored." Another voice chimed in. "Jaime Duran, the reporter. I've got a national producer on the line," she said. "They want an exclusive, tomorrow morning. You up for a live interview?" "Tell them to make space," I said, banking one final circle before pulling away from the estate, because I'm about to make headlines real damn personal. That night, things hit a breaking point. Rhodes issued a statement denying all involvement, claiming the estate was used occasionally for private events, and that he barely knew Templeton. Within hours, someone leaked a photo of the two of them, kissing, at a developer gala 6 months ago. So much for deniability. Then came the final straw. At 3 a.m., someone set my front yard on fire. A trail of gasoline lit from the sidewalk up to my porch. My fire system caught it just in time. Flames stopped inches from my door. Curtis pulled the security cam back up from his off-grid server. The arsonist? One of the HOA board members. We sent the footage to Jaime. By sunrise, the headline read, HOA War, Retired Airmen, Targeted as Corrupt Officials Attempt Cover-Up. I knew what that meant. The system was no longer trying to silence me. It was trying to erase me. So I loaded a second tank, refueled the bird, locked every backup, and I prepared for the only thing I knew was coming, the final fight. By noon the next day, the story had gone national. Jaime's exclusive ran across 3 networks. Footage of my flyover, photos of Templeton and Rhodes, the leaked documents, the arson attempt. It hit like a bomb. And the internet? It devoured it. Corrupt HOA targets decorated Air Force veteran. Local pilot exposes statewide land scam. HOA president flees as evidence surfaces. For the first time in weeks, I felt like I could breathe, but only for a second, because Templeton wasn't done. She filed a lawsuit that afternoon. Reckless endangerment, illegal surveillance, and unauthorized use of airspace. The goal wasn't to win. It was to bury me in paperwork until the smoke cleared and the media moved on. But she didn't count on what I was holding back. The ace in my pocket. Curtis had discovered something 2 days earlier, something we hadn't released. Yet a hidden account buried under 3 aliases leading back to a Cayman Islands trust account, registered to August Rhodes. That trust had been used to buy up foreclosed homes from the Red Ridge HOA. Homes they'd forced people out of. That's where the real money was. That was the smoking gun. I called Jaime. You want the final piece? You have it? I've got proof the homes weren't just stolen. They were flipped offshore, then sold back through a state-funded redevelopment program by Rhodes himself. She was silent for a beat. Then, that'll end his career. Let's make... Sure, it ends a few more with it. That night I suited up. One last time. The chopper blades roared to life, loud enough that neighbors came outside. Some watched in silence, some cheered, some just stared, phones in hand. I hovered once, then flew low and hard toward the HOA clubhouse, the very place this nightmare began. But I wasn't landing this time. I was dropping a message, literally. As I approached, Curtis triggered a preset command. A steel canister released from the belly of the chopper, cracking open mid-air. Out came thousands of printed flyers, every document, every photo, every dirty detail. They rained down like confetti, right on top of the HOA clubhouse and the street in front of it. Down below, I saw people running, collecting the pages. Phones came out, voices shouted. Then, one of the clubhouse windows shattered from inside. Templeton? I circled once more for a better look, but sirens were already howling in the distance. Media vans, police, people swarming. The lawn. I banked north and took off. No need to stay, the truth had already landed. That night, Rhodes resigned. Templeton was arrested trying to flee state lines. They caught her at a private airstrip with 2 bags and a fake passport. The HOA board dissolved itself within 48 hours, but I wasn't celebrating because something deeper stuck with me. It wasn't about just one corrupt HOA or a few greedy officials. It was about how easy it was to let power turn poisonous, and how hard it was to stand up against it, unless you flew higher. A week later, I got a call from a woman named Elsie, the schoolteacher whose driveway had been destroyed. "They're rebuilding the road today," she said, voice trembling, "with county money, the right way." "Good," I said. They owe you that. They owe you too. No, I replied, stepping into the hangar. They owe us all better than what we've tolerated. And as the rotors spun again and the sun caught the tail of my bird, I knew this. Justice doesn't always wear a badge. Sometimes it wears a flight suit. And when the sky's the only place left to speak freely, you take to the air and you don't come down until they hear you.